Supreme Court ruled today that terrorist suspects held at Guantanamo Bay have the constitutional right, that's right, you heard me, the constitutional right to challenge their detention in U.S. civil courts. The nation's highest court ruled 5-4 that the government is violating the detainees' rights. Let me remind you that the roughly 270 men who remain there at Guantanamo are classified as enemy combatants and held on suspicion of terrorism or links to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. So wanting to blow up American citizens affords you the same rights as those citizens. It's a great country, isn't it? Tom Fitton is president of Judicial Watch. And Tom, listen, we appreciate you taking the time. Here's the way I look at it. In World War II, when we were battling Germany and we took some prisoners of war, they were wearing German soldiers' uniforms. They were obviously on the other side. To us, they were the bad guy. There was no question about their innocence or guilt or our right to take them as our war prisoners. How is this any different? Is this not a defined war? And aren't these people who actually, if we let them out today, would try to kill you and me?
Well, that's exactly right, and that's what Justice Scalia, speaking for 4 of the dissenting justices in this decision, said, that this decision, this extreme act of judicial activism, is likely to result in more terrorists being released who will then go on to kill Americans. And your history is correct. I mean, there was a decision related to capturing Germans in China who were later tried in Europe. And the Supreme Court just threw all of that out. And this is the first time in our nation's history that these rights, these constitutional rights, have been afforded to enemy combatants captured abroad and held abroad.
Tom, this is Amy here. Let me play the devil's advocate, though. There are some people who say that we can't be sure that these were terrorists. Maybe they were handed over by tribal chieftains that saw them as political rivals or were paid off. How do we know that those people at Gitmo are actually terrorists?
Well, I think we should defer to the military on that, frankly, Amy. But nevertheless, there already was a procedure in place, a military commission. The detainee could already go to the military commission and say, you know what, I have a right to challenge my detention. And if they didn't like the ruling of that military commission, they would get a lawyer and go straight to the appellate court here in the District of Columbia. And the Supreme Court said, no, that's not enough. Those extraordinary rights you've already granted to these enemy combatants, which has resulted in the release of enemy combatants that have gone on to commit terrorism, isn't enough. Need to do more. And now they're going to have full access to our courts, it seems, and be able to bring in all sorts of evidence, call witnesses, maybe gain access to intelligence. It's an outrage, and it's going to create a circus atmosphere, I fear.
I've got to jump on that, John, because look, the bottom line is that the access to the intelligence is real, because if they get to really face their accuser, they get to find out what the accuser has on them, and that's going to give out a lot of secrets here. But I have to go back to the whole German war prisoner thing again. Is this not the Supreme Court somehow playing politics, saying, you know what, Bush administration, this isn't a real war. This isn't a war on terrorism. Iraq is different than Afghanistan, is different than anywhere else in the world. Aren't they jumping into the fray here politically where they shouldn't be?
That's right. They're exercising their will over the political powers in Congress and the president. They got together, figured out a way to deal with these enemy combatants that left the Supreme Court in large measure out of the equation. And the Supreme Court got angry, and they want to be the politicians here, lording over the other branches of government in terms of determining policy on how to deal with these enemy combatants in a time of war. Frankly, I trust the generals more than the judges in times of war, but the Supreme Court doesn't see it that way, or at least 5 justices don't see it that way.
Right, but can't we sit here and we can complain all day long? We can use this whole segment complaining, but this is the Supreme Court. This is the final court to decide things. How do you change this policy-wise? Do you change this legislatively? I mean, what would be the next course?
Well, you know, it's a 5-4 decision. Maybe you can appoint new justices that will overturn it. In the meantime, we have to hope that the judges here in the District of Columbia that will hear these habeas corpus challenges have some sense about them and really subject them to strict scrutiny.
All right, Tom, well, we appreciate your time. You know, it seems to me, Amy, that these Supreme Court justices used to be lawyers. This is getting more work for lawyers. That's the whole thing.
To get people in front of them and ask them questions.
Thanks again, Tom. We appreciate that. All right, we're going to be right back right